Hey guys, welcome to the Dream Chasers Ground Zero podcast. Our goal with this show is to equip you with the knowledge, skills, and even connections you need to get your dreams off the ground. Today's guest is a wife, mom of 2 toddlers, full-time employee, multifamily investor, and generational wealth advocate. She started her real estate journey with no money, no credit, no connections, and after a few unsuccessful ventures, purchased a 3-family house hack that she grew and transitioned into multiple commercial multifamily holdings. She founded Noirvest Holdings to help minorities, women, and other overlooked individuals build wealth through multifamily investing. She's also the host of the Share the Wealth Show, a podcast dedicated to discussing non-mainstream strategies to build, grow, and protect minority wealth so we can all discover ways to live free and with purpose. Tune in today for some valuable conversations about being aware of who you're asking opinions of, how you're spending today could be robbing your future self of an abundant life, and pushing through obstacles to become who you need to be. If you're a young entrepreneur or an aspiring real estate investor looking for some tips, today's interview is for you. And make sure to stick around for our guest's advice to their ground zero self. As always, if there's anything throughout the interview that resonates with you, please leave it in the comments below. Odds are that it resonates with somebody else as well. And if you leave a comment, it's more likely to stick with you. Now, without further ado, let's get to the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Dream Chasers Ground Zero. Today we have with us Nicole Pendergrass. Nicole, would you just mind sharing with us a little bit about who you are and what you do? And then we'll follow that up with the story of your personal Ground Zero moment.
Okay. Hi, Aaron. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. I love having these kinds of conversations. And if I can inspire anyone on their journey, then that's even better, right? So I am, like you said, Nicole, I am a multifamily investor. I have some properties in Pennsylvania, in New York. I'm currently working on my first syndication, which is in South Carolina. So I'm trying to grow, but one of my major focuses while I've been growing my real estate career has really been helping minorities and women get into real estate investing and really helping us build wealth through access to investments that we normally would not have had access to. And I think multifamily real estate is such a great investment vehicle that has a lot of benefits. And I just want other people to be, I guess, privy to the information that's out there and know what to do, have a big plan for building wealth, creating generational wealth, which has been lacking in a lot of our communities. But going forward, we can create that. And that looks a lot of different ways. And it doesn't always have to be real estate related, but I do think real estate should be part of almost everyone's portfolio because that is, a proven wealth builder over time. And so that's basically where I'm at. I started with really nothing. I started with no money, no credit, no connections. When I got out of college, of course, I was in debt because I had negative net worth because I had student loans and I had, of course, ruined my credit during college, like a lot of college students do. My mom, the only financial advice I ever got from my mom was don't open a credit card. So I did it for the first couple years of college, but then by like junior year, let me just get this, zero interest free thing or whatever. And then like that quickly in 2 years, I completely decimated I don't even know what my credit score was at that point, but I know it was super trash. And it took me a long time to get it back up. But during that time, after I had graduated, been working for a couple of years, decided that my major was not really what I ended up wanting to do. And I had to be 1,000% sure because I started working in the hospital. Actually, I'm here now, so I don't want them to hear me, but I started working in a hospital and I realized that I was pre-med when I went to undergrad and I was like, ugh, these doctors are not all ecstatically happy with their careers right now. I feel like they feel trapped because they have a certain lifestyle goals and expectations, and they have certain bills and just things they have to pay for, and they need to remain a doctor in order to pay for these things and to live this certain lifestyle and that they've grown accustomed to. So I decided before I spent 10 more years in school on this route, I wanted to make sure that it really is what I wanted to do. So that started my journey of exploration into what would help give me freedom, and that, you know what, freedom at that time wasn't even a big concern. It was more so I wanted to do something that I was happy with. Like, I heard too many horror stories of people hating their jobs, and that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure I was doing something that that I enjoyed. So I spent a couple years taking, continuing education classes after work and some other things of like just fun stuff that I wanted to do. And that's when I got introduced to real estate investing. And then real estate investing, when I found out that a normal person can do it, and it's not really, you don't have to have millions of dollars, you don't have to be like a big company, there's something that normal everyday people are doing, and that there's strategies, even if you don't have like a lot of money or credit issues. And from then I said, oh, you know what, this is this is my way out, because at least if I'm doing real estate and I create money and I get some, some big checks rolling in, then I could just do whatever I want for free anyway, because it doesn't matter. I have the money from the real estate to support whatever I want to do, even if I don't get paid for that. And so that kind of started my journey. And in my head, I thought it would be like, they say a long time, because they say it's the long haul, and to be into real estate or whatever goal you're pursuing, it's a journey, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And so in my head, in my young, naive head, I thought a marathon's like, oh, maybe that's 3 years, 3 years. That's a long time, right? That's so long. And this is like 10, 15 years later. And I'm still at it, still working. And of course, like I've accomplished way more things. I'm in a completely different space than I was then, but I've just been grinding it out, trying all the things, failing at some things, and just keep pushing and keep moving, and until where I'm at today, where I said I have like a couple multifamily buildings, and I'm at the verge of replacing my expenses with passive, well, I won't call it passive because I'm an active operator, but with distributions and income from my buildings. I'm just about to replace my expenses, and I'll be able to scale back from my job and then do this full time and really explode and escalate from there. So I don't know, I know I talk a lot and I can get wordy, so I don't know if there's anything else you kind of want to cover in that, but if I really went through every single detail, it would be a episode way too long for what you're probably trying to accomplish.
Not a problem at all. But no, I really loved it. I love the mission. I love the vision. And congratulations, you're so close. That'll be a really, really cool time when you're able to start scaling back and start putting more time into that. So congratulations there.
Thank you.
But yeah, so before I kind of go into any questions, I do just want to ask you to share with us that, story that we talked about of that personal ground zero moment and some of the things that you learned from that to help you get to where you are today.
Okay, my ground zero moment actually was when I first got introduced to real estate. The only reason I was able to take advantage of, I went to a 3-day seminar, and it's one of those things they tell you, make sure you clear out your credit cards, blah, 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 go run to the back of the room, bring like your parent one day or something, because they want you to sign up and they know the parents have the money or whoever, or clear off your, move to a 0% interest card or whatever to get you to sign up for this expensive coaching. The only reason I was actually even able, because I had no money, and which I didn't, and I had ruined my credit and it was not repaired by that time. The only reason I was able to actually sign up for that program, and that started my entire like education journey, and I just started drinking from a water hose, was because of that program, was because my mom came with me on the 3rd day, and she used some money from my dad's, I don't want to say life insurance, but semi-pension or something that he had gotten, and it wasn't much, but my dad had passed a couple of months before that. And for some reason, my mom trusted me enough and saw the vision from attending with me that last day of the seminar to be able to use like maybe a third to a half of what she had gotten back to pay for me to be able to do those classes. So my ground zero with losing my dad was really it was like things just happen and you never expect it. And my dad had been sick for a long time, but anytime he complained about, being tired or anything else that was happening, we always, because it was just been so long, we'd always just kind of wave it off and say, oh, that's just dad complaining again, right? Um, so it didn't really, it was a shock, but like I should have expected it, but wasn't expecting it because he just was always there, And so that really was, I was just, it spun me for a loop. It was like, I just can't waste time with life. Um, I also thought my mom, I need to retire her or be able to retire her sooner rather than later, because my entire childhood, because my dad was sick, he couldn't work a full-time job or any job really. So he got those Social Security and disability benefits. And my mom, I have 4 younger brothers, so that's like a 7-person household. So my mom was supporting all of us and she was working 2 to 3 jobs for probably, I don't remember how long, since middle school to high school, my entire school career almost. And I remember us as kids even going with my mom on certain jobs to help her finish certain things in time for her to get to her next job without being late, so if we had to go do things fast. So she would bring a couple of us to help her. She obviously does not even remember that because we brought that up to her recently. And she's like, I never took you on jobs. And I'm like, yes, mom, you definitely did multiple times. So this is not something that we made up. But in any case, so my entire, what drove me more was, one, my mom paid for it. And then 2, I saw her work so hard for so many years. And I said, I don't want her to work until the day she dies, like I want to give her the option to step away if she wants to just live her life and have fun and do things, because, losing my job, my dad definitely just hit me in the way where it was like, yeah, life is definitely too short and you can't take it for granted. You can't procrastinate on things that you want to do. And so that was my ground zero moment.
I mean, I suppose I'll start with I'm sorry for your loss. In the few that I've experienced in my time, I feel like you can't ever effectively prepare for the loss of a family member, and it's just something that, like, despite how long it may have been, carrying on, you're still never ready for that person to be gone. So I suppose we'll just start there. But then, shifting from that. I think, I mean, it reminds me of a little bit of my journey, but just, I think that the drive to essentially retire our parents is something that has, like, definitely inspired me, but also some other young people that I've been able to meet over time. And I think that that's something that, I think that's something that really inspired me early on, just because I saw how much they were working, how hard they were trying to provide, but yet somehow they always made a way, like they always made it work. And they were always at, like, every sporting event, everything that we ever had, as kids. I have an older sister and a younger brother. Um, but like, I just never really got to see them do things that they enjoyed for the sake of it. Where, like, obviously, like, I'm not saying they didn't enjoy coming to sporting events. I'm not saying they didn't enjoy doing things with us, but I just, like, I still never really, like my dad had some hobbies, like he likes to work on, restore cars. He likes to do some stuff like that. But I feel like I never really saw my mom with, like, a hobby that she'd like to just sit down and do just because she enjoyed to do it. Although I guess she is kind of a special case. My mom growing up, the only thing she wanted to be was a mom. So I guess her hobby was kind of built in. But 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 either way, that was something that I always saw kind of growing up, that, like, I kind of subconsciously noticed, and I never necessarily, like, said anything to them or, like, made anything out of it, but I always just kind of noticed, like, like, I never really get to see mom and dad do stuff like that. So then when, this idea of financial independence was introduced to me, like, as a possibility, I was like, that's very intriguing. And that's something that, like, man, if I could accomplish that, like, for them, that I feel like that would make me feel so good, just because, like, the I'm trying to think of how much I want to go into here because that's a long story. But um, long story short, we've had a lot of kind of family things go on that like my parents are going to have to work for a long time yet. And like that's where like it really like looking at that really makes me want to be able to step in if I can. And sometimes that's hard because like I'm growing up too. Like I'm gonna have to, like as of right now, I live at home, but like eventually I'm gonna have to pay rent. Eventually I'm gonna have bills. Eventually all these things are coming in, but like I want to be able to pay that forward. And it's complicated, but it's very, it's a thing that like has definitely motivated me to work harder because I don't, want them to have to work themselves into the ground, especially like knowing all that they sacrificed and did for me to give me this opportunity that I have right now. So
Exactly.
anyway, I didn't mean to go off on a whole thing.
No, you're great. And the fact that you even can recognize that at a younger age is very perceptive, because I didn't recognize that my mom and dad were like not doing anything for them until I was away an adult and had kids. And I'm like, oh crap, man, how did my mom do this with 4 to 5 of us? Like, I only have 2 kids and I'm tired. These kids wear me out. And so my excuse is I think kids are just built different these days. Than I feel like I was a calm, very nice young child who obeyed all the rules. And my kids don't, don't do that. So I don't know how my mom was running around with 5 kids in tow. It's like, the mama duck and all the little ducks like in a row behind them. That's definitely how my mom was. They called us the Dunlap tribe because there were so many of us. But yeah, I think, yeah, I because as a young kid, it's so in your own world and you have so many big problems. You're not paying attention to what your parents are really going through or what's happening. You're just making sure it's what's the benefit for you. So very perceptive and open for you to even recognize that at even your age now, because even at your age, when I was your age, I was not really thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's where like I feel like with my journey specifically, what I've tried to do is I did get introduced to some of this stuff relatively early. And through a lot of conversations about that, more or less what I would always get in like my earliest networking conversations, what I would get from more or less every single person is I wish I started sooner. So that kind of started to like creep into my head a little bit, that I was like, wow, okay, if everybody that's, investing right now says, I wish I would have started sooner, shouldn't I probably start investing right now? Start doing like, or at least start learning about it, start to get that ball rolling a little bit. So like that way, when I get there, I'm not saying the same thing that they said, like otherwise, following that path, I guess we'll call it, but either way. So then that I think thankfully kind of started to ingrain that early, where I kind of just happened to be in some of the right places at the right time, in the right room with some people that were willing to share about some of those things and kind of plant some seeds in a young kid's mind and let them run with it. So then that's obviously brought us here and obviously continuing to grow from here. But yeah, so anyway, kind of washing the whiteboard here, resetting everything. I know when you were talking about your story and things that you were going through, your journey into real estate, and you were talking about how to a point, a lot of it's kind of trial and error if you don't have like somebody directly kind of walking you through a deal flow or different things like that through that process. Speaking on failure, I think is the direction that I'm kind of going here. That a lot of like entrepreneurship, starting a business, and kind of even just investing is trial and error. And it's a lot of figuring out what works best in certain situations. Shifting the conversation here, what is kind of one of those failures that you can speak to that kind of taught you a lesson that has now helped pave the way to the way you operate today?
Man, that's a loaded question. I really need to think. There's so many failures, but to me, I don't even know if I consider any one of them the turning point or something that drastically shifted the way I was doing things. They were all like mini learning lessons along the way. And And I took something from each one of those experiences, and even when I didn't take it right then, I've since then have tried to look back and say, okay, analyzing this, what do I think went wrong, or what could have been better, or, what can I take from this? What lesson will I take moving forward from this situation? I'm trying to think. One thing, you know what? A couple things. One's from earlier on, and kind of the start of my journey, of my real, like, in getting into multifamily, was I house hacked a 3-unit apartment building. So 3 units, and 1 to 4 is still residential, so it's still considered residential, it's not on the commercial side. But I lived in one of the units and rented out the other 3. The reason that I got this is I used some wholesaling strategies that I had learned when I was trying to wholesale, and that did not end up well, but I still took those experiences and what I had learned, and I applied that to trying to my acquisitions for the 3-unit. So I sent out direct mail to people who had owned 3 and 4 unit buildings in the area that I wanted to live. And the response to one of the mailers was the property that I bought. And so I guess a lesson that I learned from that is that the seller at the time was extremely, like, uber nice, just so helpful, and everything he wants to do to help. And don't worry about this, because I'm going to help you get this. Because he was an experienced investor, right? And I was a new investor and I didn't know anything. But he has, he has a mortgage broker, he has a lender, he has this, like, he has all these resources. Even, like, I feel like I actually went to the closing with nothing. Like, when I first talked to him, I didn't have we didn't use agents, but I didn't have a broker. I didn't have a lender to try to get pre-approved. I didn't have a lawyer to help attend with the closing with me. Like, and he referred these people to me. And so I just used who he referred. And then even when in our conversations, he would always tell me, oh, don't worry about this. Don't worry for anything, because I'm going to do the best for this. And he was going to put the property, when I saw it, was vacant. And so he was going to find the tenants for me so that I wouldn't have to worry about anything. And as soon as we close, I would already have cash flow coming in, blah, blah, blah. And it was all for me. Like, he was doing all this stuff for me. Just trust me, trust me, trust me. And even throughout that, there were a lot of things that we talked about that once we closed were not what he was telling the tenants. And so now I'm starting this relationship with the tenants already butting heads, because I'm coming in with one assumption and he told them something different. And so then I got stuck, because, I'm in New York, and New York, landlords have no power here. So you really, like, I was stuck with the leases that he had signed with them, which were $100 less per unit than he told me he was going to rent them for. And he also didn't, he told me that I didn't pay for water, which I did pay for water, which at the end of the day is neither here or there. That was semantics. I could go into more of that, but I won't. Then there were, like, a couple of other things, because he was being cheap and trying to fight certain bills that I ended up getting stuck with because he never resolved them. And I don't know how he did his screening, because I happened to build up, even after the headbutting, I built up rapport with one unit. So that lady, sometimes she would pay late, but we had a good working rapport. So she would always pay. And even when she left, she made sure she was paid up, because we were cool, But then the other floor, I ended up having to evict them after like a year and a half. And I went like almost a year with no rent payments from them. And so that was all my lesson, I guess, from that experience was trust but verify. Like, there's so many things I could have done pre-closing to force his hand as a seller to apply with, to acknowledge and go in alignment with what he had told me, or at least I could have called him out or got compensation for something, or got seller credit or something like that at the closing table, because I was supposed to, the way the tenants was supposed to work is that he would find the tenants, but he would give me the tenant application and I could approve or deny any tenant before they moved in. So I found out that tenants were moving in after they had already moved in. And I still didn't get, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. You're going to get the tenant package. You're going to get everything. I got those at the closing table. So this is my very first purchase. Like, this was a month, like 8 months closing process. This was the longest closing ever. There was no way I was walking away from that table. without my property. And so I just sucked it up. I didn't know, like I had my attorney there. I could have pulled him to the side and say, this is not what we discussed. We could have renegotiated at the table, but I didn't know about that then. Like I didn't know that I could have, kind of strong arm, because they actually needed to sell too. And the reason he really wanted to get tenants in was because he needed cash flow because he was dying there. And I thought it was all for my benefit when it really wasn't. But that was a long story of just one circumstance where it's just trust but verify. And my takeaway is, if anybody has to tell you repetitively that they are this certain quality, more than likely they're not, and they're trying to hide something. So don't just make sure, trust me, trust me, trust me, trust me. That's a red flag. Why do you have to tell me to trust you 50 million times if you're a trustworthy person? You don't have to say that, right? Like, so there are a lot of, even when I see people's personalities now, people say, oh, I'm so humble, and oh, I do this. Oh, but like, if you say humble, 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 humble all the time, you don't really, humble people don't tell other people that they're humble. They just, you can tell by their actions, So I just think that is either they're trying to convince themselves, or they're just trying to pull the wool over your eyes, or whatever it is. But just be careful, trust, but verify everything. That's, I guess, the biggest lesson with how now I look at other opportunities moving forward.
No, 100%. I mean, and I think especially in that example, it's made pretty apparent why you need to verify what you're told, and not necessarily just take somebody's word on that. Especially, in a deal like that, you can really get screwed over depending on how things are drawn up. Luckily, it wasn't too severe, but obviously it could have been.
It could have been worse. It could definitely,
But
both
that
tenants
too.
could have not paid me, and then I would have been really screwed.
Right. But I mean, it was your first deal. That's the learning experience of it. And that's where, like, I really love the point that you made about each failure being a little learning experience. And I think that that's like, that alone was just so powerful, because I think too many people are so afraid to fail that they don't put themselves in a position to fail. And in doing so, they don't put themselves in a position to learn, because they don't take action on that thing. They never go try. So they never get to learn whether right or wrong. And I think that is somewhere that I see a lot of young people now is they don't. I think a lot of people now that I think a lot of what I see in young people now is they really won't try things based on somebody else's perception or what somebody else says they should or shouldn't do or will or won't work. And I think that I can't even necessarily speak too much to this, because I feel like I've always kind of been somebody that kind of like questioned everything, I guess, where like if somebody told me to or not to do something, I just kind of wanted to know why. But at the same time, like so many people now, I think they take things, like you said, like they give that trust without verification, where somebody in a lot of cases it's somebody close to them, where they'll say, hey, maybe I want to pursue a career in real estate. Well, then maybe mom or dad or Uncle Chuck or whoever tells them like, oh, you wouldn't make a good realtor. You're not friendly enough for something. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
And then they'll take that and they'll never go pursue becoming a realtor because somebody said that they wouldn't make a good realtor.
And I really like this, the whole conversation around fear and who you are asking or seeking advice from. That's a huge, like that by itself, you could spend so much time delving into that and really unearthing what are your personal beliefs and limitations that have been established into your subconscious from when you were little and you don't even know. Because when you're young, you absorb everything around you, and everyone who's raising you, all the parents, like the parents, the grandparents, your parents' friends and adults, like words are powerful, and any words that they say and beliefs that they say, it just comes out in their language. It instills a belief in you that you sometimes don't even realize is there. And there's a lot of beliefs about, especially when you come from certain communities or depending on how much, affluence your family comes from. If you don't have a lot of money in your family, a lot of those beliefs get instilled in you from early. And you think that you have to work hard for money, or that money doesn't grow on trees, or, there's a limited amounts of money. In order for you to have money, you got to lose money. It is all like limited mindset and not an abundance mindset. And abundance is all about growth and getting out of your comfort zone. And that's where the fear comes in, because a lot of people, like you said, are scared to try something new. But people don't realize that their breakthrough and their full potential is on the other side of their fear. So on the other is stepping outside of your comfort zone. And there's ways to get around that. And you just mentally sometimes have to psych yourself out. But if you're not going to potentially, and you know what, I don't even want to say if you're not going to potentially die, because people's fears of jumping out of an airplane, and they still do it. I just think about this Will Smith video where he was talking about how deathly scared he was of jumping out of an airplane, and then he did it. And like now everything else seems like nothing to him, right? But even outside of that, it's kind of, I heard a talk from Tim Ferriss say, he talks about fear setting instead of goal setting. And with fear setting, he really just takes a situation and he thinks about what's the worst that could happen. So I'm scared to do this because such and such is going to happen. But then you break that down. Okay, well, if that does happen, how would I respond to that? So it's not just about being scared that something's going to happen. If you can sit and think about worst case scenarios and come up with a solution to handle those when they come, is like visualization. Then when it does happen, you already have the things set up in place to handle that. And then it's not as scary because you already know how to fix it. So a lot of that is, and it's easier said than done. I won't pretend that it's not. But just getting outside of your own mind, stepping into your uncomfort and just living there. And it's not that you have to get over your fear to act. You can act with your fear. So you can still be scared and still do it anyway. So you're being scared and taking action at the same time, and that's fine. Because the more you take action, the more the fear will dissipate. And also the last thing with that is, you were talking about them asking other people's opinions. That's the worst thing ever, like be very, very, very cognizant of who you are asking opinions of. Because if the person that you're telling has never, ever done it before, you're telling somebody you want to buy real estate and they've been renting all their lives. So what are you expecting to get from them as far as feedback? They don't know anything about owning a property because they rented for their whole lives. But they heard somebody who knows somebody else who knows somebody else who had a bad experience because those tenants do this and all this other stuff. But aren't you a tenant right now too? So are all tenants like that, or just that tenant? And you don't know what that other landlord or person did that, you have no clue any situation. People only hear the bad highlights. They don't know any of the details. So how can you make any kind of assumptions off of somebody else's experience? That doesn't mean that's going to be your experience. Go in it educated, team up, get with people who know what they're doing. And if you have a goal, go ask somebody who's actually done it and get their advice first, because I guarantee they're not going to tell you, oh, don't do that, that's a bad idea. So sorry, that was a rant, but I just had to touch on all those parts.
Oh, no, it's totally okay. I mean, it's things that I relate to heavily. And I think a lot of that, especially with young people now, is so difficult because we're kind of groomed from such a young age to think a certain way and to, ask for help from our elders, people in power, whether that be like teachers, guidance counselors, like the people that we grow up around, college professors, different things like that. And those are the people that are supposed to know. That's who we're supposed to lean on, in moments where we aren't sure about something, or the people that we confide in if we want to pursue something. And the problem with that is, as you just mentioned, that a lot of people in these positions haven't exactly pursued whatever that thing is that you want to pursue. And I hear stories all the time of people that, have walked into their guidance counselor's office and they said, I want to be, I don't know, an astronaut. And they'll just blatantly tell them no, you'll never do that. You can't do that. and I really hate to say it because I'm not trying to belittle anybody in these positions, but all I'm really trying to draw attention to is the fact that they operate in a very small environment. And when you operate in a high school every day of your life, you don't ever necessarily think that much bigger. Where kids in like small public schools, like I went to a small public school, I didn't necessarily have anybody that was in that environment that had gone anywhere to expand my mind to think like of the possibilities. Now, like we still had like very tons of positive reinforcement. Don't get me wrong. Like they were telling us, dream, do these things, like, go do whatever it is you want to do. But we didn't necessarily have any live examples saying like, dude, I went to work with ABC, like you can do all these things. Like we didn't necessarily have anybody to teach us to think any different. And that's where we really didn't know all of the options that were out there because we weren't necessarily like exposed to anything like that. But anyway, I wasn't trying to go off on a whole thing there.
No,
but I think it just feeds into like the generational mindsets in a way because like of the way the school system is shaped, that like pretty much ever since it was created, the school system was built to essentially create workers, right? So like that's still what it's designed to do. So everybody who goes through the system is essentially still taught the same things, groomed the same way. Like we're all still kind of in that channel where like that's why like I feel like entrepreneurs catch so much like flack because they're very opposite, where they're like, no, I don't want to work for you. I want to employ you. And people kind of look at them sideways, but they're like, well, I don't want to work for you. Like, but you're going to go work for somebody else. So it's like, anyway, not trying to go too far into that. But I mean,
we need workers. Like we need people to run certain industries and factories. And like, I guess factories, I don't know, the factories are being automated now with robots. So I don't know if we actually need people for that. But for high skilled labor, you actually need to go to school for that. Like you don't want a plumber or electrician or a doctor or lawyer doing things when they're not trained, right? Like you need to make sure that stuff's done correctly because society needs to function. People need to live or get healed or whatever. So yeah, I really think that whole worker pipeline, there's so many things that were taught in school that are made to make you be an obedient worker and to not think outside of the box and to not collaborate on your schoolwork. Like, yeah, you need to learn, your math and simple algebra and things like that. And like, it's probably better if you don't cheat or work with somebody on that particular part if not helping you learn it for yourself. But we all know in entrepreneurship and business world or anything, you get further when you work together with people. And especially when someone is strong in one area that you're weak in, like everyone talks about improving your weaknesses, but that's not what you're really supposed to do. You're supposed to improve your strength and make your strength be extremely like dialed in and laser focused. So you become an expert in that one area. So why are you wasting time trying to get good at something you're not good at just so you can say, you're better at that? But why? Why not just get laser focused on an expert area and partner with somebody who's strong in your weak area? And then you guys can go further together like that. It basically wastes time trying to improve something that's going to take you forever because there's so many hours and hours and hours to learn how to, if you're not good in math, doing an Excel spreadsheet. And it takes you forever to even learn how to use Excel. But if you're like a people person or you're great with money or you're great with something else, it would take you much less time to become at a super higher level of what you're already good at than it would for you to get at a medium level of something you're not good at, right? So like, it's just, it doesn't make sense. And I like the entire concept of working together and teamwork to create a bigger, take down a bigger goal or objective than to struggle alone by yourself with it for however long before you even see any kind of progress or chip away at the stone or whatever it is you're building. But it's just something else that they teach you in schools that's not really optimal for real life.
No, and you're right. And I do just want to kind of jump in here and drill that down like a little bit further. Just that we live in a society that almost, I would almost say, views weakness as like a sin. And I think that, I mean, that might be a little bit strongly worded, but at the same time, like it really is, because think about like going back kind of to the school system. And I'm not just trying to turn this into a whole thing where I'm just going after the school system, because what do I know? But what I'm saying is, like, I know, like, coming up through school, like, I never asked questions. And I know a bunch of people that never ask questions. So nobody asks questions because we'll get called stupid. Nobody goes outside because we get called ugly. Nobody goes and pursues this because we get, like, society is like, we collectively have created this stigma or whatever that, like, where like the school system, yes, has kind of kept us in that channel, but at the same time, like, it's society that pressures everybody to stay in that, because we don't build each other up. Like we keep each other in that mindset. We keep each other in that frame of mind, and especially like it's so apparent in I mean, I call it like small town USA, more or less, just like the little towns out there with the very small public schools, little neighborhoods, like that. Our grandparents were factory workers. Our parents caught a little bit of the latter half of that, and now they're just, blue collar, because as the factories have kind of shifted away from, that. But like we grew up, and they grew up seeing that type of household, and that's what everybody in town did. That's what they did. That's what they were taught. They were taught all of those ways, and then that was somewhat instilled in us, and we don't know any better.
Yep.
So then when we grow up seeing that, like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but we are not taught to think anything outside of that, because that's all we know. And that's where, like, I think kind of some of that generational stuff that we were touching on comes in, where like so many young people now automatically identify as their parents or their friends do, because they don't know any better. There's nobody expanding their mind. There's nobody telling them what possibilities are out there. And it comes to a point that, like we were talking about, money, where like I personally feel that, and I did see this on a clip the other day too, that generational poverty isn't about money, it's about mindset. And it's to the point that don't get me wrong, money is the tool that can break the cycle. Like, you still obviously need money, and that those habits do manifest as money. But it's the fact that, like, if you think you're broken, you'll be broken. If you think you're an addict, you'll become an addict. If you think you can be successful, you can be successful. And it's where, like, you might come from generations of addiction, divorce, abuse, whatever that may be. And like, that's what you see. You don't know any better, but that doesn't mean you're destined to follow that same path. But like, we don't all have people in our lives telling us that we can break that cycle. Mm-hmm. Like, if we don't know any better, how are we supposed to, yeah. If you don't know any better, you don't know what you don't know. I feel like that's a good way to kind of put it. Like, if you don't know that there's other things out there, you just don't know that you can kind of step out of that cycle. And I think that, like I said, with like the false ideals that society has created, and these unnecessary pressures, to the point that we feel the only thing that we can accomplish is working for somebody else for the rest of our lives. Like, we just don't believe in ourselves. I mean, and like,
some people are also just lazy. Not, you know what? And I would say lazy is semi, but I'll be nice. I'll be politically correct. People are comfortable, and they don't want to go outside of their comfort zone, because getting outside of your comfort zone requires work, and it doesn't feel good. And even though you will be growing personally, developmentally, like business-wise, whatever, there's a process. And then if you want to grow more, once you get to a certain level, you have to step outside your comfort zone again. So it's like a constant state of uncomfort, but that's the only way for you to grow. And if you don't want to grow, some people really just don't. They're okay with a mediocre life. And that's what they have relegated themselves to, maybe because they also don't think or believe that they could do more. But even if they think they can do more, if they put their mind to it or they really put some action behind it, some people just don't want to do that. Like, and that's, I guess, to each his own. That's if that's how you want to approach life. But I want to live abundantly. Like I don't want a mediocre life. I think that's probably my biggest fear is to continue living a mediocre life. Like I always want to be different or outside the box, like look at this puff of orange in my hair right here, like I'm trying to, I like to stand out. I like to be different. So, yeah, but that I just had to bring that in too, because some people just, they don't want to change. And even like, I love that, generational poverty is more about mindset than it is about money. And I really think like, yes, some people are just like, poverty's real. You can't just mindset away everything. But there are plenty of people who are broke and live, in not great areas and, the projects of hood or whatever, who have money. They have money. It's just on what they spend it on. Like they could not keep money in their pocket. You get $100, it's gone the next hour because there's so many things for them to buy. Like it's burning, that money's burning a hole in their pocket and they have to get rid of it. They have to spend it, but it's not on an investment. It's not on, staying something in the community. It's on something to make you feel good in the moment because everyone wants instant gratification rather than long-term growth. No one wants to wait for anything. So spending money in your pocket today is robbing future you from growth and investing and living an abundant life. So you're going to live $100 bill to $100 bill now because you can't keep it and teach yourself how to really grow the money instead of like letting future you live abundantly because you were able to sacrifice now. So that's the mindset. People are comfortable and they don't want to wait.
100%. I'm so glad you brought that up too. I mean, that makes me think. Another clip I saw just this morning. Who was it? I don't know. The way the guy was speaking about wealth and the way that he broke it down is he said that he likes to think of wealth as a ratio, or like a state of mind rather than a specific number. Mm-hmm. Where like what he was saying is like you can truly define exactly when you become wealthy. Like you can decide when that moment is. And like whether that be that you're looking to build a better future or financial freedom, like you're always going to be analyzing how much you earn compared to how much you spend. And there's a lot of people out there that, like you said, make an outrageous amount of money, but they're exceedingly poor. And then on the other hand, there's a lot of people out there that make very modest salaries, don't necessarily make a ton of money, but they're considered very wealthy because they have control over that ratio of what comes in versus what goes out. And I think that like a lot of people don't really they hear the phrase like live below your means and they're like, well, I don't want to cut back on ABC, but at the same time, like that's the sacrifice that you are willing or you aren't willing to make. And like that making those decisions to live below your means like gives you the freedom in advance so that you can have the choice to work when you want to and not because you have to.
Exactly. That's what it is. And that's another thing too that it's not talked about. Is I see people talking about it more and more, but it's not all about, not everybody, like I also said, not everybody wants to work for themselves. Not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur because that's not easier really than having a full-time, like a W-2 job. But it's about building the money and the wealth that you can choose whether to work or not. Or you can also have options when something happens inevitably that maybe your job lets you go, or maybe something happens physically, you're not able to perform your job functions. How are you people just assume they're gonna work till they retire, but what if life happens? And what if you're not able to, but you have not been at least even putting that money to the side to something passively that you could invest in, and you could still work your job if that's what you want to do, or you can find a job where you can give back and feel like you are providing, meaning or giving back to the world if that's what you want to do too. So it's all about the talk about money. It's not really about the money. It's about the options and the freedom that having more capital brings you, especially because we live in a capitalistic society and people think that that's like a dirty word. but all right, go outside and try to get groceries without money. Try to find a place to live without money. You need money to survive, right? And if you want to go to that next level, or you want to have a cushion and a comfort where your mind is at ease, then you really got to be smart about how you spend and use your money and how you invest it to build up for a safety net, or for, pass on to your generation. So however you want to do with it. But if you don't make a plan, then you're going to be SOL when life happens.
No, 100%. I mean, and just bouncing back to the previous point that you had made about like work and people not necessarily like when they kind of want to make a change and then not wanting to put in the work, was that like another like a kind of quote to follow that was like I just saw it yesterday. When you knock on the door of opportunity, don't be surprised when work answers. And like that reminded me of a clip that I saw that, I mean, it was a man more or less talking about what he was calling your harvest season. And what that kind of made me think of was that he just kind of kept iterating, like, your harvest season is coming, your time is coming. Like, you've been tolerating things for years that like either you've been ignoring, you've been putting on a back burner, like that you're kind of just trying to avoid, but they've just been festering this whole time. And now they're just kind of like absolutely driving you insane because you've just ignored them this whole time. And now they've just kind of created this whole well of like stress in your life. And now, like at this moment, what you don't realize is you're closer to your harvest than you've ever been before. And I think like that's what it made me think of when you said that, because yeah, you start stepping in this new direction, you start doing all these new things, and all of a sudden life gets more difficult. And like I think it's this phase, this period of time, like right before our quote unquote harvest season, that breaks a lot of people. And it's where like a lot of people like really do want to do better, and they really do want to either help others or give back, or like whatever that mission may be. Like they really do want to make that change. But then I think a lot of them just get beat up by the challenges that life throws out.
Yeah.
I mean, and I can speak to that personally too. Like, obviously, like I haven't done too much. I'm not claiming to be some big business owner or anything like that. But like I was working on a lot of things, like the last year, that I had a lot of momentum coming into last summer, and I was really kind of neglecting some things that traditionally I would have been paying attention to. But I was kind of like head down, grinding out this like business idea that I had, and more or less like August of last year, that all hit like a dead stop. My grandfather's health went downhill, and we ended up losing him. Like, and like I'll admit, like that absolutely derailed everything that I was doing. And that was like that moment for me where it was like, was I ready for that thing or not? And like life kind of threw me something that I wasn't ready for, and that I had to like learn from. And you know what? It showed me that I wasn't ready for that. And that's okay. Like it's something that I still want to get back to, but it really did kind of derail everything that I had going on at that time. And there, I mean, I'll admit, like looking back on it, like I was closer than I thought, but it was still like one of those things that life was like, are you ready? Are you deserving of this thing? And I'm not necessarily saying that like, yeah, I'm doing so great, so life decided to take my grandpa. Like that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I
But
get it. Yeah.
but it's just like one of those things that like life tests you, and it's like, are you prepared for the harvest, for the rewards that you're about to receive, for that vision that you have? Like, are you physically prepared, mentally prepared to make the most of that decision, and not the decision, that vision, and appreciate that when it is or isn't manifested in your life?
Yeah. And it's, to add to that, firstly, sorry about your grandfather. Like we both are, understanding of how that affects you. But it's always darkest before the dawn, right? That's what that cliche saying is. But that is very applicable in life. There are things that happen, like you could be going so hardcore for a certain goal, and then it all falls apart when you're doing everything in your power to hold on to it. And it ends up, if you look back at those circumstances, when you thought that that was a door closing, it was really redirecting you to a better ladder anyway. You were climbing up the wrong ladder. So it's closing that opportunity because that's not where you should have been going. And so opened up another door over here. And that might not be the same day that that other door opens, but if you had gone through that door, you wouldn't be available for when the better door opened, you know? And so it's always about, and there's a difference there is, okay, so I truly believe there's either doors, opportunities close because there's another door in a different direction you should be going, versus there's also times when it really like is a test, like you said, and for you to get what you need, you have to push through and get to the other side, because pushing through the obstacle is going to make you become the person you need to be in order to do the thing that you're looking to do. If you don't go through the hard time, you're not going to be able to handle the reward on the other side anyway. So you need to build the tough skin. Like that is just a character builder, and it's helping you be able to prepare you, because you're saying too, like, are you ready for that? You're not going to be ready for it if you just skate through to it. You're only going to be ready for it after you have to climb the mountain to get there.
Absolutely. I mean, and one last thing I'll add to that is just the bigger that you're dreaming, be prepared for essentially bigger challenges.
Yeah.
Because like the further you want to go, the more life is going to test you. The bigger that you want to achieve, the more you're going to have to go through to essentially prove that you're ready for that you are deserving of that vision. And then I'll go ahead and kind of cut that there. But just kind of winding things down here. I know we're probably kind of pushing it close to time here, but I do just want to say thank you so much for being here and being willing to share with me and my audience, your ideas and experiences and everything in between. One last question that I always enjoy asking the guests is that if you could go back in time and have a conversation with yourself during that ground zero moment that we spoke of, what do you think you would tell yourself in that conversation?
That is hard. What would I tell myself in that ground zero moment? You know what? You know what I would tell myself? I would warn myself that it's not going to be as quick as you think, and to go bigger sooner. That's it. No need to start small. I mean, yeah, I could go plenty of ways with that, but you don't have to start, too small. You can dream big sooner than you think.
Absolutely. I mean, and really that's enough said in a way too, where like, I know what you mean, like that you could easily go a lot further on that, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, thank you so much again for sharing. Could we just get the best place for anybody interested and tuned in here today to follow up and get in touch with you?
Oh, actually, of course. Actually, my website is noirvestholdings.com. That's NOIRVEST holdings.com. I have a lot of information, educational materials on real estate investing there. Also, my social media handles are on there. You can reach out to me on any social media platform. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn under Nicole Pendergrass or Investor Nikki. So that's investor with no I at the front. And Investor Nikki, Nikki. I'll send you all these links too, so I guess you could put them in the show notes, because I know that could end up getting. But you'll find me on Nicole Pendergrass, even on YouTube. I'm on YouTube as well. So any of those channels, you can DM me, and I'm happy to hop on calls. I love helping people and guiding and getting people like started, helping to change mindsets. Or if you're interested in investing, you want to get started, whether you want to be active or passive, or like there's a lot of other things that I've been involved in as well. So I'm just willing to chat and help people wherever they are, and give whatever resources that I have that I can share.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, just for your willingness to pay it forward to anybody who's tuned in here today, please go follow up and get in touch with her. If you couldn't tell that she's genuine, comes from a good recommendation, and I promise. So thank you again. Everybody go reflect on some of the powerful things that we spoke about today, and always remember, this is Dream Chasers ground zero, and there's nowhere to go from here. But thanks again, Nicole.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. If you found value in any part of today's message and haven't already, please like and subscribe. For more episodes just like this one, click the link that will appear at the bottom of the screen in just a few moments. I really want to be providing as much valuable as possible for you guys, so please respectfully leave any questions or suggestions in the comments below, or feel free to leave a comment or shoot me a DM on Instagram or LinkedIn. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Until next time, there's nowhere to go from here but up.